Hi, I'm Dan Brunton. Welcome to the Connection podcast series. Today, in the second part of a digital transformation series, we are talking to Pat McGrew of the McGrew Group, a digital evangelist, and she is going to be talking to us a little bit about how to bring digital print into the traditional corrugated box plant. So Pat, welcome. Thanks for joining us again. I'd like to start off by looking at this concept of onboarding. How do we bring digital into the corrugated environment successfully?
So, there are a lot of pieces to job onboarding and process onboarding and concept onboarding. So the first thing anyone who is looking at bringing digital print into their box printing environment needs to think about is, one, where are you going to put this device and how are you going to get inventory to it? Who's going to run it? I mean, all the classic things. But then you need to start to think about what is it going to take for one of your salespeople to go approach an existing customer or a new customer, make a pitch to them, and let's say they're successful. So now you got to print it. So how are you going to get their specifications, which are going to be different than a classic brown box, right? Because they're going to care about color, they're going to care about the feel of the substrate. People who buy digitally printed corrugated, they're picky people. They have the same level of concern as somebody that you might classically sell commercial print. So you're dealing with this sort of weird hybrid buyer. So to get the job on board, you're capturing a lot more information than you used to. And when I've walked into classic corrugated plants, the salespeople who've been around for 20 years, their job is really to be an order taker. Right? There's rarely a net new product that they're asked to go pitch. Maybe the size of the box, maybe the close, maybe the glue that's being used, but it's not really a net new product. Digitally printed corrugated is a net new product. And so all the things you have to capture to onboard it are an extension to the things that you're used to doing. So your order taking mechanism, whatever that is, whether you've got them all out there with the iPads, or they're still taking it on a notepad, which is still classically more common than anything else. The information they're being asked to capture to get the job on board is going to be much more extensive. And if you don't get that job information captured at the front end, the poor customer service people have to go capture. So you're going to start losing money on the job, like just getting it in-house. Classic job onboarding is all of those customer interactions that get from the point where the customer had an idea about what they want to buy to the salesperson bringing that information in-house and ensuring that it can be produced. It's the best way to think about onboarding.
Okay, and Pat, you've touched quite significantly there on the sales team and the salesperson, because we're not selling brown boxes anymore. We're not talking volume necessarily. We're talking about value, and particularly with digital print, a lot of organizations, you tend to be talking to the marketing department rather than the purchasing department. So how do a lot of your clients deal with this transition? I mean, do they throw out the sales team and bring in a new one, or do you sort of bring in new talent, maybe people who've come from the graphic arts industry? And what's your experience in terms of how companies deal with that new look salesman?
So the classic attempt is to take existing salespeople and repurpose them. And this has been ever true. This is true when a commercial print shop brings in digital equipment, when a label shop brings in digital equipment. Everybody tries to take the existing team, throw a little training in front of them, and toss them out at the world and pray for results. In some cases that works. If you've got a sales team member who has the right let's go get it mentality, is really curious about the technology, digs in and understands what the opportunities are, that can work. But inevitably, you will have to add additional sales team members, and inevitably, you will be looking for people who do come from an existing digital print sale background to augment the team that you have. I have worked with teams where they try very hard to educate and repurpose the team that they have. They pay for training, they do all the right things, but almost inevitably there are a few people who simply will never be able to wrap their mind around what it takes to sell it. So in smart shops, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, you guys go after what you've always gone after, maintain those relationships, fabulous. Now, for those of you who are going to be selling in the digital print category, we're going to do some additional training. We're going to do some additional things to help make your sales experience the best that it can be and your opportunities the best they can be. So, Dan, it ends up being hybrid.
Okay, and is it also the classic situation that we've got the corrugated industry trying to proactively go out and sell something that's new, or do you feel that digital is fully understood by the brand owners and the asset managers?
No. I think, there are certain brands that have embraced the power of digitally printed corrugated, boxes and displays for short run. They recognize that there is value if they're doing a very specific kind of campaign. Digital can give them an advantage because they can create some bespoke packaging that speaks to that campaign, which might be very localized or regionalized. But that's not the majority of the brands, not today. And remember that the brands all have agencies that they work with. And some agencies are very digitally aware and facile. And other agencies are still living in, 1990 and are thinking in terms of, only printing millions of things. So the target for digital print in this industry are those brands that typically run localized campaigns that have something that speaks to a local organization. One of the best ones I saw was for fruit. You wouldn't think of digitally printed boxes for fruit, but think about them, they're seasonal, right? And so they really do have a short lifespan. And in order to if you're a grocer, you want to make sure that the fruit that's best right now is what people are picking up and buying. So working with the box manufacturer, grocery chain created the boxes that very specifically looked like the fruit that was currently the best to have. And people go with their eyes and, ooh, that looks good. And that actually worked for them. So while there might have been at that time a bit of an upcharge to do digitally printed cartons for that fruit flew off the shelf. So that's the kind of value proposition. Now think about your typical brown box corrugated salesperson trying to sell that campaign to someone, right? It's different skill sets.
And Pat, you also touched on a very interesting point there in terms of regionalization and individual campaigns. Now, I've been following digital print for best part of 12 years, I guess, within the corrugated industry. And it was very interesting because in the early days, a lot of the print equipment OEMs were talking about the power of digital print and that you can have individual pieces.
Box of one. Yeah, it's kind of like in the book industry, we talk about book of one, and we were talking about box of one.
Yeah.
And that might have been a little optimistic.
Yeah, because I think, when you look at our industry in terms of we don't have the capability to control the data loop. So we're talking about a higher speed process that if somewhere in the analog part of the conversion process, in the die cutter or the gluer, for example, if there was an error or a missed die cut, if you've got unique pieces, how do you then feed that data back in to get that sheet printed? So do you feel that the corrugated industry, as a rule of thumb, should not be concentrating on the box of one, but thinking more about the cost benefits of these regional promotions?
I think it's a crawl, walk, run process. the data loop and the matching and all of the processes that go into creating box of one, they're actually very well known and well defined, and that software exists in the marketplace. It's not millions of dollars. It can be done with not tons and tons of work, but that's not where this industry is right now. I think at this moment, the best programs for those who can create digitally printed corrugated boxes, displays, is to go for regionalization and localization. And it's probably, 18 months, another 24 months out before you're going to see too many, before you will see some who are really ready to take on that box of one idea. There will be early pioneers in this, and there have been early pioneers in this. But first, not only do they have to learn how to do it, but then they have to figure out how to sell it. And then they got to find a buyer who's willing to do it, right? So look at folding carton. Folding carton very early on figured out that they were going to have to crawl, walk, run. And so we got the sort of bespoke designs, or, using something like HP Mosaic, where you kind of seed and you get 92 boxes that are, each one is different. That was the path. And it's really only just now that folding carton is starting to do more really truly personalized box production. And there are companies that are set up to do it. Digital print for corrugated will follow, but you've got to have a need, and you've got to have the means to do it. The means to do it, it takes some time, it takes some effort, it takes some money. Is there a value to doing that today? Probably not. If I owned a digital print plant to produce corrugated, that is not what I would be looking at today. I would be looking at going after that short run, high color, interesting substrate kind of printing. And I think that's going to intrigue more customers. And over time, those customers will start to ask for a little bit more customization. They'll start to ask, ooh, could we put a name on the box? Could we put the store name on the box? And you can kind of gently wiggle your way into those more data-driven loops.
And Pat, I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you here now, because it was very interesting to hear on the AICC and TAPI Tech Talks last week. Ted Simotis from HP gave a little bit of insight into a development that HP are making with BW Paper Systems, where effectively they're looking at running a C500 nearline or inline with a rotary die cutter, and then possibly even a folder gluer mechanism. Now that's quite an interesting concept, because obviously you're starting to join the dots here in terms of creating complete digitally printed and produced boxes. But I do sort of have the worry and the concern that you're taking an engine that is producing maybe 3,500, 4,000 sheets an hour and putting it into an analog process that is capable of running at 12,000 an hour. What's your take on this merger of digital and analog printing and converting process?
And it's not even a curveball, Dan, because it's been my life for the last 20 years. This is actually the natural thing for people to try. And there are a certain number of clients of HP that will find that this is an incredibly efficient thing to do because of the nature of the work that they do and who they do it for. I've never personally been a fan of matching up and doing inline finishing of digital print. And the reason is because, as a rule, digital print devices, they become incrementally better over time, faster over time. And if you want to take the most advantage of this investment that you've made in this hardware, you're going to want to be able to take those upgrades on board and be producing more board feet, right, as it's possible, right? And the C500 is a very nice machine. If you're now paired, locked in line to a very specific speed rotary device, which is mechanical and not likely to get faster over time, And I think you're locking yourself in. So again, if you only produce a one thing and you produce it for a very specific customer set, and that investment, you've done the math on it and the margins make sense to you, to lock a C500 to a very specific output process, God bless you, drive through, please. Yeah, but I think for the vast majority, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, so if you took a typical job that might fit this whole this model, would be something like a tray for pet foods or for beer cans or something, where you could actually then have a standard die cut shape, so that you're not having to change the tooling, but then allows you the ability to produce 50, 100, 2,000.
But your 50. Sales guys better be able to go sell the heck out of those trays you can produce, right? They need to go find absolutely everybody who needs one, because you're going to need it in order to justify that digital print front end, right? You're talking about a massive footprint to do this all in line. C500 is not a small footprint, right? And then you're going to bolt on the finishing on the back end of it. And I think, again, there will be buyers of this solution. There's no doubt that there's somebody out there who needs it and wants it and is delighted to have it. But for the vast majority of people doing digital print, I wouldn't typically recommend, inline solutions. I like nearline much more than I like inline. I think it gives you way more flexibility.
Well, Pat, thank you very much indeed. That's been a fascinating part 2 of our digital transformation series. And I look forward to connecting with you again next week. And we will be ready to record part 3, where we'll be looking at color and expectations around color. So in the meantime, thanks ever so much indeed for listening, and look out for the podcast next week.